All right, last week we finished Proverbs 7, 1 through 13, where we talked about how we should keep Solomon's instructions and how we should not be enticed by the immoral woman as the young man was. How we learned that his opportunity, the young man's opportunity, his intention, and his secrecy all contributed to his downfall. And this morning we're going to take on the second half of chapter 7. Before we begin, though, let's go ahead and pray. Doug, could you pray for us?
Sure. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we do thank you for today and the privilege of coming in and worshiping you. Bless this day, be with us, guide us, help us to learn. Pray these things in your name.
Amen. Thank you. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the second half of chapter 7. Could someone read Proverbs 7, 14 through 27?
I have fellowship offerings at home. Today I fulfilled my vows, so I came out to meet you. I looked for you and have found you. I have covered my bed with colored linens from Egypt. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let's drink deep of love till morning. Let's enjoy ourselves with love. My husband is not at home. He is gone on a long journey. He took his purse filled with money and will not be home till the full moon. With persuasive words, she led him astray. She seduced him with her smooth talk. All at once he followed her, like an ox going to the slaughter, like a deer stepping into a noose, till an arrow pierces his liver, like a bird darting into a snare, little knowing it would cost him his life. Now then, my sons, listen to me. Pay attention to what I say. Do not let your heart turn to her ways or stray into her paths. Many are the victims she has brought down. Her slain are a mighty throng. Her house is a highway to the grave, leading down to the chambers of death.
Thank you very much. So, we left off last week with the immoral woman in verse 13. She was getting ready to speak. And we just heard what she said. And basically what had happened is she had caught our wayward and unsuspecting young man from last week. She caught him in her clutches. And she basically opened her mouth and was about ready to say something to him. And it says that she was going to speak with impudence or shamelessness. And what was it that she said? What did she tell him? What were some of the things that she said? She actually said quite a few things. Yeah, what was...
She said she was alone, that her husband was gone.
Yeah.
He'd taken money, he wouldn't be back for a while.
Yeah, she kind of planned this out, right? She knew where her husband was going to be. She knew he was going to be away. She knew he was going to be away for a while. And so she kind of plotted this all out. And she basically, in the very beginning of her statement, she says, I have peace offerings with me. I have paid my vows today. So she came out to meet the young man. So her intention, she did this intentionally. They didn't just meet on the road passing by each other. She actually came out to find him. It says that she sought him diligently. And she says, I have found you, and my bed is prepared. So there is nothing happenstantial about what she was doing. She had intention and forethought in what was happening. And it says that she didn't make a secret of it. Everybody knew what kind of woman she was, what she was doing, what she was about. And so what was her agenda? What was it that she said tells us what her intentions were? What was she? Right. She says, come now, let's take our fill of love and let's delight ourselves with love. So from an earthly standpoint, that sounds great, right? So the first question I have is, what does the immoral woman actually mean when she says that she has peace offerings or that she has paid her vows? What is she talking about?
She's ready to feed him too.
Okay, so there is the idea in Leviticus 3 and 7 it talks about this peace offering. There was included in that, so you would take your peace offering to the priest, they would divide it up, and the priest would have part of it, and then you would take part of it back, and you were supposed to share it with your family, with your loved ones. And instead of sharing it with her family, she wants to share it with him and include the peace offering in this illicit affair that she wants to have with him. And so basically what this is saying, she is a religious woman, right? And she is following the law. And basically she's saying, I've paid my vow, I have the peace offering, so I've done the letter of the law. But that's as far as it goes, right? Her religion appears to be skin deep, and that is it. Because all of her actual desires, her actual motives are all sinister.
I
And
hate the word religion.
why so?
You can be religious about anything.
Uh-huh. But James says a pure and undefiled religion. So,
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying.
Uh-huh.
I don't want people to call me religious.
okay.
Because they can call me religious about a lot of things that I do.
Uh-huh.
I want them to either call me a Christian or not call me.
Because that word, in our day and age, that word is synonymous with being skin deep, right?
Or just practicing something continually.
Right.
Apparently this wasn't something she just happened to do this
Nope.
one time.
Nope. Yeah, she's been following the law, right? But she only follows the law outwardly. She's not following it inwardly. And that is why Solomon is trying to warn his sons not to follow the example of this wayward young man, because he is playing with fire, right? So she talks the talk, she walks the walk, but she is not truly a follower of God. And she wants to share, instead of with her husband, she wants to share with someone else this ceremonial feast, and then she wants to take him to her bed. She wants to use the religious occasion to gratify her selfish desires. She's enticing him with this offering as well. And she claims that she's paid her vow, she's fulfilled the law, and she feels justified in keeping the letter of the law, but now that it is done, now she wants to live it up and do whatever it is that she wants to do. But Jesus told us that this is not what we're supposed to be doing. He told the Pharisees in Luke 11:39, he said, "Now you Pharisees make the outside of the cup and the dish clean, but your inward part is full of greed and wickedness." And in Matthew 23:26, he says, "Don't just clean the outside of the cup, clean the inside of the cup also." So she basically has set the stage for the young man. And in 19 through 20, we see where she says, "For my husband is not at home. He has gone on a long journey. He has taken a bag of money with him and will come home on the appointed day." So we know from what she's saying that there's several things that she is letting the young man know. She's telling him that her husband is away, that he's on a long journey, that he has taken provisions with him, which means that he's going to be gone for a while. So there's no jeopardy of him going into her house and the husband coming home suddenly.
Well, this seems ironic.
Uh-huh. How so?
She's really informed in the things that's available for him,
Uh-huh.
like what's coming up. But she is so deceptive, she doesn't finish the story.
Uh-huh.
That her way is the way to hell and death.
Uh-huh.
She's only deceiving him or giving him the sweet flowers, but
Yep.
not the sting that comes with the thorns.
Yep. And it's very possible she doesn't know that her way is the way of death, right? We very rarely we are very rarely in a position where we are fully informed of what our sin does to us. Because oftentimes we will deceive ourselves that this is what we need to do. And in my counseling class, there was a case study where a young man came to the counselor and told the counselor that I believe God is telling me to divorce my wife and marry my secretary who I've been having an affair with for a year. And no matter what the counselor did to try to explain to him, God would not tell you to do that. he was convinced in his own mind that that is what God was telling him to do. And so he went out and destroyed his marriage and then destroyed his life subsequently after that. And so we often will deceive ourselves. So it's very possible that she does not know that. But
Well,
so, yeah.
I kind of disagree.
Okay.
She's very much aware of what she's doing. He's deceived, but
Mhm.
I think she's
Oh,
very much aware of. She's not deceived.
Okay. Okay. So she knows that she's going to destroy him,
Yeah.
and she's okay with that.
Yeah.
Does she know that she's also destroying herself?
Well, she's already destroyed, and
Okay.
she uses religion just like the Pharisees.
Yeah, she uses it as
She
a
uses it,
mechanism.
but she's very, in my opinion.
Mhm. Yep. Yep.
Might be wrong, but I think she's very much aware.
Okay. She has the young man's number and knows when her husband is returning. She wants to commit adultery with the young man. She has planned it out. She has prepared her bed. She knows where her husband has gone and when he will return. And this reminds me of when I was stationed in Texas. There was a lot of stories going on the military base. It was right after Desert Storm had ended, and we would hear stories about if you go to a club off base, that there would often be women wearing shirts that would say, "My husband is in Desert Storm," or "My husband is overseas," right? And you know exactly they are not being coy. You know exactly what that is all about, and you know what they're trying to do. It was very clear. So the next question is, how might a young man, or even for that matter, a young woman, or any one of us, how might we be tempted in less overt ways than, this woman is very overt. She's very straightforward. But how might we be tempted in less overt ways? What are some examples in ways that we could be tempted? Uh-huh. Right. Mm. Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it does happen on both sides, right? It happens for men, it happens for women. Yeah.
the world is full of them.
Yeah.
TV,
Mm-hmm.
doing what the other people are doing that year round.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a, well, they were doing it, kind of thing, and kids are real susceptible to this, I think, too. But that pornography
Mm-hmm.
can lead to a frame of mind
Mm-hmm.
that sets the stage for these things.
Right.
The list just goes on and on and
Mm-hmm.
on. It's out there.
Yep.
So what's your next statement?
Yep. So one struggle that we have, like Jennifer was talking about, getting our needs met by somebody else other than our spouse, right? Can be a very big temptation, and it doesn't ever have to go to the point where somebody's asking you to go to a motel room, right? Just getting your emotional needs met in a relationship that is with somebody other than your spouse. Emotional needs, financial needs, physical needs, inappropriate attention, too much opportunity, and too much secrecy will destroy you quickly. We talked about Fogel, right? The subway guy. We talked about him. There's a lot of cautionary tales out there. I think I talked about one pastor who ended up destroying his entire life. His entire life blew up because he was paying thousands of dollars to some lady online just to have a relationship with her, just to be able to communicate with her, because his marriage was not going the way he thought it should go. And yeah, go ahead.
Well, that's what we're talking about, like, in a sense, excuses that we can have.
Yep.
Fall into these traps. And yet this woman in Proverbs, she's doing so much to entice this new relationship. Why in the world don't old relationships do so much for their spouse that they don't? We basically don't. We have to keep. We always are aware of the enemy coming from without. But if we're not putting time, energy, effort, resources, lack of selfishness into our relationship, we have the opportunity to look elsewhere.
Yep.
And it's an amazing thing that God's created us with this sense or these hormones or these feelings. You can be drawn to somebody that's out there wanting attention.
Yep.
And so I think you really need to, in a good, wholesome, godly relationship with your spouse, be putting a lot of energy and effort to make it good and keep it good.
Yep. And that's marriage is based on, and the world does not like to hear this. A lot of people do not like to hear this, but the marriage is based on, primarily above everything else, commitment. It is not based on the emotions. It is not based on this idea, this fleeting idea of love or passion or lust or any of these things, because in the end, all of those things will have their own seasons, right? They'll have ups and downs, and over time, things start to settle down, and the fire that maybe you had when you first got together kind of dwindles a little bit to like an ember. But commitment, if your relationship is built on commitment, and if it's built on Christ, commitment to Christ, then that will stand the test of time, right? Yeah.
So it has to do with, your commitment has to do with the covenant that you made with your spouse, your bride, or with your husband, and with God. So your commitment is based on covenant relationship. And that covenant relationship never changes.
Right.
It remains the same. And you're committed to your oath before God and before your spouse.
Yes.
And that's what you have to live by.
Yep.
Nothing else.
And just like you said, it takes work. A marriage does not come easy, and it does not come without work, right? You have to continually be putting into it. You have to continually, like you said, you have to continually sacrifice yourself. Men are called to sacrifice themselves for their wives and for their families, right? And that is not one time. That is on a daily, continual basis for the rest of your life, right? So in verse 21 and 22, we have the result of what has happened. In 21 and 22, he says, "With her enticing speech, she caused him to yield. With her flattering lips, she seduced him. Immediately he went after her as an ox goes to the slaughter, or as the fool to the correction of the stocks." So I thought it was interesting that there's a reason why Solomon calls him the wayward or the unsuspecting or the gullible or the naive young man, because he has no idea what is about to take place. He has no idea what is going to happen to him. And the result is that she got him. By her enticing words, she has caused him to yield. So he has made a choice. He has made a decision. It was probably a very impulsive decision. It was probably one based entirely in the flesh, and probably very, not impromptu, but impulsive. We have a son who's very, very, very impulsive. And we sent him into the military hoping that the military would be enough of like the bumpers in the bowling alley. We hope that that's enough to corral him until he gets old enough that those impulses will kind of die down a little bit, or he'll be able to learn to control his impulses more, because growing up he's had no impulse control at all. So, and that's similar to this young man, because he did not think about it. He did not consider the ramifications of it. He simply listened to what she said and yielded. And it says, with her flattering lips, that she seduced him. So she took over. She compelled him to follow her direction. And he is not, it doesn't say anywhere that he is conflicted about his choice. It doesn't say that he is confused or unsure about what he's doing. It says he immediately went after her. And sometimes we do this with the rest of the world, right? Sometimes we are enamored by the things of the world, whether it's money or possessions, whether it's the new car, or whether it is trying to keep up with the Joneses and make sure that we have more things or a better house than our neighbor does, or from our coworker that we don't really care for. And we just want to one-up him. And the way Solomon describes it is, this young man went after this woman like an ox goes to the slaughter. And I thought it was interesting. He doesn't say like the ox goes to the trough, like he's trying to fulfill a need, but he's actually going like an ox to the slaughter. And I'm assuming that means that the ox really has no idea what he's doing when he's walking that way. When he is heading off to the slaughter, he has no clue that he's about to die, right? He's completely oblivious of it. And that's the way the young man is. He is walking himself into death, and he is completely oblivious.
I think verse 7 back in this chapter,
Uh-huh.
It says, and I saw among the naive
Uh-huh.
and discerned among the youths a young man lacking sense.
Uh-huh. Yeah, because Solomon looked out of his window, right? And he saw a group of young men. So that's a subset of people, right? A group of young men. All these young men are just starting out in life, and yet there was one of those that he sectioned out and he said, this one does not have any sense. And then he describes the example, and we're seeing it now, why he said he doesn't have any sense. Because he is not exercising due caution. He is not using impulse control. He is not either aware, or he doesn't care about what he is seeing in front of him. He's just going. He's going to do it. Yeah, Dave. This day and age, no, because there's a lot of older men that act like young men, right? Yeah, and actually, there's a lot of. We went to Florence yesterday, and I saw a lot of older men acting like little boys. So, what's that? Yes, it was ridiculous. So no, there's no age, really. There's not. Solomon proved that for us, right? So we know that he started out his race well, but he did not end it well, right? So just like the ox goes to the slaughter, this young man followed after this woman. And here we have, in the last part of verse 22, we actually have a textual variant. And in the Masoretic, it says, in the Hebrew Masoretic, it states that just like a fool goes to the correction of the shackles or the stocks instead of the ox. But in the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Old Testament, it states that this young man does this as a dog to the bonds, or to the binds that he has, or like a dog to a chain. So basically, the idea that he's trying to give us is that he is willingly and excitedly walking into being captured, to being subdued, and to being enslaved by this woman and what she is offering him. The New Living Translation and the NIV, they render it completely different than everybody else, and they say that it's like a stag caught in a trap. But regardless of the translation, the meaning is pretty clear. This young man is basically doomed, right? It's pretty much over for him. He has made his choice, and now he is literally going to lie in the bed that somebody else made for him, right? So in verse 23, we see what the consequences are of his actions. So we now have seen what the woman has offered him. She has spoken, and we see what she has offered, and we see the response that he has given her. And now we're going to see in 23 the consequences that he's going to suffer. And he says, till an arrow struck his liver, as a bird hastens to the snare, he did not know it would cost him his life. So Solomon likens this to somebody being struck, or an animal being struck with an arrow in the liver, or the NLT says an arrow to the heart. And we know both of those are fatal wounds, right? There's no coming back from those. And so it is the consequences of the young man. The consequences are going to devastate his life and quite possibly ruin his future prospects. They're going to railroad his chances at being at a productive and God-honoring life, if nothing else, right? Because she is offering him religion. She is offering him something that is only surface level. She is not offering him an actual relationship with God that is a transformative relationship. She's offering something that, again, is skin deep. He likens it also to a bird flying into a snare. And you would think typically a bird would fly away from a snare, but apparently the bird does not see it. The bird does not heed the warning signs. It's almost like the bird that flies directly into the window pane and falls straight to the ground because it was completely unaware of what was happening. And neither the deer that struck or the bird flying have any idea or any clue that what has happened will cost them their life. And how is it going to cost him his life? How will it cost this young man his life? Does anybody have an idea? In what ways is this action that he's taken today, in this example, how might that echo through his life going forward? What's that? Yeah, okay, but in what way? What kind of practical ways is he going to lose his life? Solomon is making that point, but... Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. It's interesting how we can look back on our life as we get a little bit older, and we can see our mistakes much clearer now than we did when we were in the middle of it. Leaving high school, I proposed to a young woman, and she accepted, strangely, and we were engaged to be married. And I went into the military, and we had a long-distance relationship for a year, and it was a nightmare. And we fought all the time, and we ended up breaking up. And oddly, though, when I was in the middle of that situation, I was certain we were supposed to be together, and I was heartbroken when we broke up. But now, looking back on that, I know without a shadow of a doubt, if we would have gotten married, we would have probably had a couple kids, and we'd probably be divorced today, and I'd be very jaded, and I'd be very angry, and who knows what all kinds of hell we would have probably heaped on ourselves, because we were not at all equally yoked. We were not following in the same direction, and yet we were young and we were naive, and it is to God's grace that we broke up. Yeah.
I think something else that we could throw in there too. Mm-hmm. The bed is before God is sacred, mm-hmm. and there's like a marriage relationship bound to intercourse, and it's more intense than that. Two shall be one. Yep. And so basically, you're involved with a harlot, mm-hmm. and that's got, and she's or however you look at the male or female, mm-hmm. but you get into them and they get into you.
Yep.
You are not the same person. Things change.
Yep.
And
Yep.
before God, that's what he says, that keep yourself pure,
Mm-hmm.
unspotted from the affairs of this world, or the
Yep.
ways of this world, or sin like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sin of the spirit. It's deeper than just the action.
Right.
It's intense.
Yeah, Paul made the point that it is a distinct difference between that and like lying, right? It's not that sin is different or one is less than the other, but there are ramifications with what they are about to do that we imprint on each other when we have those kind of intimate experiences, and then we walk away and we take those kind of people with us, right? And even though we are no longer with them, they have somehow colored us or shaded us a different way, and we become different people because of it. And all the pain and all the damage and all the trauma that come with that now gets carried into our other relationships, right? And it makes things more difficult and more complex. And God would spare us that, right? If we would listen. Yeah. Okay.
I think it's even more important to be on the lookout, not for the brazen woman walking our way,
Mm-hmm.
but the quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that even at my age, with everything that I've just went through the last couple of years,
Mm-hmm.
if I hadn't had somebody to talk to, I had a couple of people reach out that I was like, oh, they're just being nice.
Right.
I am naive.
Right.
That stuff, because I wasn't raised around all of that stuff going on.
Yep.
Exposed to it or whatever. So I think if I hadn't had these couple people to talk to about, oh, well, this person's just going to be nice,
Mhm.
just want to talk or whatever, like, no, I'm saying that. I could have been in a situation
Yep.
that I shouldn't have been in.
Yep.
Because I just tried to be nice or friendly.
Yep.
And so I think it's really important, especially if you have kids at home, to make sure that you're talking to them about not just the one that's going out and very aware with a sign on our t-shirt
Right.
or whatever, but the ones that are more subdued or quiet.
Yeah.
About
The ones that are less overt.
Yes.
And they may not even know what they're doing,
Exactly.
right? They may not even have nefarious intention, but still, it still could lead to terrible disasters, right? If we're not careful, if we are not watchful, and just like you said, you had people surrounding you that you could talk to and that are not involved directly in your situation, so they could provide some more objective opinions about the situation, right? And we have to be on guard because we never know when we will get tripped up. Paul says that nothing happens to us that is not uncommon to man, right? All these things, all the temptations that we have are all common to us. We all go through them. And so we have to be careful. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yep. Right, yeah, because we've learned that the husband whose wife has been unfaithful is enraged, right? We learned that in Proverbs as well. And his rage will not be quenched at all. And that could spell jeopardy for the young man. And he may walk right into it and not even know that that's going to be the end for him. And it will just end in disaster for everybody, right? Everybody involved. So in verse,
I think that idea you have watching, I think that's
Mhm.
so important
Mhm.
with when Jesus and the disciples are in Gethsemane,
Mhm.
he tells them, watch and pray so you will not enter into temptation.
Mm-hmm.
The way this chapter is set up, you can see the steps along the way, and each one of those steps is a choice.
Yep.
I mean, yes, he's very naive,
Yeah.
and not understanding the consequences of those steps, but there are choices along the way, and I think that's why we need to make it about us and what we're doing, and not just about that evil person on the other end.
Right.
Because we make choices all along the
Yep.
way, and we have to be watchful and vigilant.
Mm-hmm. And we don't know what kind of situation the young man was in, right? We don't know what his upbringing was. We don't know if he was raised in a godly home. Solomon doesn't tell us that, but Solomon is using the young man as an example for his sons, right? And he's trying to instruct his sons to not go down these roads, to make those right choices. Uh-huh. Here, not today. Huh? Not today. No. So Solomon's conclusion in verses 24 through 27, his conclusion is this. He said, listen and pay attention. And it's funny, we don't seem to be able to say this enough to our kids. Pay attention. We say it all the time, over and over again. And are you listening? And our kids are constantly telling us that we're saying it too much. That stop already, we don't want to hear it. But Solomon is telling his sons, don't follow the example of the young man that he just explained, that the young man above. Don't be taken in by the immoral woman or the adulteress or the world itself. Don't be taken in by these things. Don't be deceived. Do not accidentally stray into her path. Basically, don't put yourself under her influence. Don't allow opportunity to take you over. And the reason why, he goes into detail. She has condemned not a few men, right? She has condemned a lot of men along her way, right? And that goes to what you're saying, that maybe she really knows what she's doing, right? And she's doing it just maybe to serve her own ends. And she's perfectly fine with that. And all of them were considered, all of these men that she deceived, all of these men that she captured and destroyed subsequently, they were all considered to be strong men. They could very well easily have been brilliant men. They might have even been spiritual men. And she has taken captive of all of them. We should not deceive ourselves and think that we are above temptation. Because if it's not the immoral woman, then it is something else, right? That is because we live in a fallen world and we have fallen flesh. And so at some point in our life, we will be presented with some sort of temptation in our life. And like Kyle said, we at that point will need to make a decision. And then once we make that decision, there'll be another decision right around the corner. And another decision around that corner. Yeah, Bob.
I'd like to read Galatians 5:16
Yeah.
through 21. To this I say then, walk in the Spirit, and ye shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. For the flesh lusteth against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh, and these are contrary one to another, so that you cannot do the things that you would. But if ye be led by the Spirit, ye are not under the law. Now the works of the flesh are manifested, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance of emulsions, wrath, strife, sedition, heresies, envying, murders, drunkenness, reviling, and such like, of these which I tell you before, as I have also told you in times past, that they which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of God.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So the last discussion question is, how can we avoid the fate of the young man? So he gave this example to his sons to avoid the same fate. How do we avoid that fate?
Stay in the group.
Stay in the group, yeah, right?
Read, pray, obey.
Yes, right? Actively pursue Christ. It's, we talk about God coming to us a lot, but we need to pursue God. We need to do it on a daily basis. It needs to be part of our internal and core makeup of who we are, that we need to pursue Christ.
I think you need to really know what the consequences of putting your hand on the stove.
Yeah. Yep.
It hurts. And I've been around Memphis.
Mm.
There's one guy that hurt. He was pounding on a tank. They come back and with a chisel and he says, and it was ready to go on a strike.
Yeah.
He says, I knew it was going to hurt, but I didn't know it was going to hurt that bad.
Yeah.
And we looked at each other, how can we get in that position? I knew it was
Yep. The other thing that we need to do is bathe our minds and our lives and our behaviors in both the Word and in prayer. If we are not intimately involved in prayer, then we will be susceptible to temptations. And the temptation, somebody said, it's everywhere. It's all around us. And lastly, we need to avoid the opportunity. We need to avoid our intention, and we need to avoid secrecy in our lives. And if we avoid those, then we will have a much better chance. So this morning we talked about how the immoral woman, her religion was not genuine. That from the Christian context, from our context, we would call her a carnal Christian or a cultural Christian. And she had a devious agenda. And there are people who have malignant intentions throughout our lives. Everybody around us, I wouldn't say everybody around us has nefarious intentions, but many do. And we have to watch out for that. And we learned that it worked. She was able to catch him like a moth to the flame, and like a fly to a web. She was able to do exactly what she wanted with the young man. And when that happens to us, we have to pay the consequences of our action, regardless of the reason why we did it, regardless of our justification or our excuses. And lastly, Solomon tells us to avoid being ensnared at all costs, to stay far away from temptation in our lives, to remove ourselves from the circumstances, from the situation, remove the object of our temptation from our life and completely. And instead, we need to pursue God wholly. We need to chase after Him. And we need to have Him be everything that we are and everything that we have. James 4:8 tells us, if we draw near to God, then He will draw near to us. So next week, we will start in on Proverbs 8. We will do the first half of Proverbs 8, where we will hear from wisdom herself and what she has to say to men, and most particularly to those who are naive, just like this young man, and what she calls the simple ones. And we'll find those out next week. If anybody has any other questions, Ross, can you pray for us?
God, thank you for the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, nothing has changed. These temptations are able, it's not just a young man in the middle age, it's old and elderly and all this, and fire and the burn thing. Thank you that you want to draw us near to you, that you have time to listen to us, talk to us, prayer. You love them and love them. Lord, that thank you. Protect our first love. That we may open our ears, our hearts, our minds to the message, and just pray for your glory. In Christ's name.
Amen. Thank you, everybody.